Azure podcast. This is episode number 516, being recorded on the 2nd of April, 2025, with special guest Mike Becker. On Teams with me, I have Cynthia and, of course, our special guest Mike, who we're going to get to in just a minute. But before that, let's just cover a few updates that have been announced in the Azure space. Cynthia, I want to say that one product team that have been very active in the last week or two is the AKS team. Right? Even in the previous episode that we recorded, I announced a whole bunch of AKS related updates, and there's even more updates in April. So it's pretty amazing how they're coming fast and furious. But one of them is related to the Azure CNI, right? So that's the computer network interface or the container network interface, I think, that's built into Azure, where they have vendors can have their own sort of network stack plugged into AKS or Kubernetes. And there's a company called Cilium that makes a network stack that has a lot of features, like it offers layer 7 policy support, it offers encryption, it offers management of IP addresses. So it offers a lot of features in the network space that customers want. And now they can get that using AKS, right? So if they do want all of that control in the AKS cluster, they can use Cilium and plug it into AKS because it's available as a CNI. A few more updates that have been announced is the load balancer support for AKS. Now you can have multiple load balancers connected to AKS. It used to be that there would be, you'd be constrained to just a single load balancer per cluster, but now you can have multiple of them per cluster. So that's another enhancement that they've announced. Another one in AKS land is network isolated clusters in AKS. So now you can control the egress traffic much more easily using Azure Firewall. Typically, in the old days, you'd have to route your traffic into a special sort of egress network and do all sorts of funny things over there. Now this is all managed pretty easily. There's also AKS cost recommendation that's integrated now into Azure Advisor. And one of the a new nice feature that they added was related to GPUs, right? So GPUs are becoming popular. And of course, AKS by default will install an NVIDIA GPU driver when you deploy AKS. But some customers may not want that for some reasons. Maybe they don't want the GPU. Maybe they want to install their own custom GPU driver. And so you can actually now tell AKS not to deploy the default GPU driver. And then you can go ahead and control that using the command line. Let's see. Yeah, I think so. As I said, there's a kind of a whole bunch of updates that came out for AKS. I'll put a link to all of them. It's probably probably too much to announce here. Fair to say that they have kind of released a major upgrade to AKS. And yeah, so that's kind of all the updates I think I'd like to cover today. Let's get over to our special guest, Mike. Mike, so nice to see you back here. I think both Cynthia, it turns out Cynthia and I both know Mike from previous roles at Microsoft. And he's, of course, a legend in the Microsoft, what used to be called MCS, or Microsoft Consulting Services, now known as ISD, or Industry Solutions Delivery. Sorry. Thank you, Mike. ISD, Industries. I was confused because I am currently with ISE, which is Industry Solutions Engineering, and Mike is with ISD, Industry Solutions Delivery, which I guess was the old MCS. So, yeah, so, obviously, in part of the role, Mike has been on the forefront delivering some very cutting edge solutions to our customers on Azure. And we wanted to pick his brain on some of those solutions. He had one in mind that we want to talk about. Cynthia, we talk about individual Azure services a lot, right, on this show. So we have all these services that are running, but it's nice to talk about how they all connect together, how they plug in together, how we make something happen, how the magic is happening, right? And I'm hoping that Mike can kind of shed some light on that today.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a big honor and pleasure for me to be invited and to talk about one of the solutions we delivered recently. Indeed, That's a kind of solution which enclose different technologies and modern products, modern technologies of our company, cloud technologies, but very strong pragmatical targeting, and has predefined use cases for business value. That's and overall, we talk about the pure Azure cloud solution. It's integration solution to collect and prepare comprehensive information about firms, companies, and other organizations based on the economic data and mass media feedback. So the solution leverages publicly available and paid sources and services, contains data processing techniques, and generates insightful and predictive reports. All the components we delivered with implementation using Azure platform products and technologies, and that gives us some robust and cloud-based environment with enhanced security. So about the use cases, first of all, the use cases for this solution we see as possible use cases. Investment analysis, investor can use the solution to evaluate financial health and public perception of potential investment targets. Then it can serve for market research. Companies can analyze competitors and the market trends to refine their strategies. And additionally, it helps for the risk management. The organizations who use such kind of solution can identify risk and opportunities based on economic indicators and media sentiments. Please, Cynthia.
Yes, Mike, I know when we worked together, we were working on like a blueprint of what a architecture should look like. So I'm curious from this architecture you just described, where you can get a lot of intel from the internet about a specific company or specific information. How do you approach this when there is some existing workload already at the company or at the customer you're working with, and how does it play along with all these additional Azure services that you'll be introducing?
Well, first of all, we implemented the usage of different sources of that, because the public available sources and the paid services, they provide information about the same companies with a slightly different edge and a slightly different spectrum. And we collect together and join not only qualified information about economical data, the economical indicators, we add also analysis of the sentiment analysis using our OpenAI. So it provides that enrichment of the quantified data by qualified data. So you see the trends and overall sentiments in the mass media and feedback of the customer, feedback from the competitors, and so on, and that accompanies the economic data and provides a complete and comprehensive view on the data.
Yes, I'm trying to kind of walk me through, when you first started, when you got these requirements from the customer, and the customer says this is what they want to do, right? How do you kind of go about figuring out, like, kind of what Cynthia was saying, like, what's this architecture going to look like, right? Like in Azure, we know we want to deploy it on Azure. Sort of what sort of services should we use? Like what's the kind of thinking, or what's the discussion that you have to have with customers to say, okay, what should we use? Like there's 5 different ways to do this in Azure, right? What's the correct way to do it? Like what services are we going to use from this big menu of services that Azure offers? Because I think this is the number one question that most, our listeners would probably want to know, is that how do you go about, how do people go about figuring out which services to use and how they should all work together to produce the output you desire?
What you're asking for, that's about the architectural and overall solution drill down design, because the customer usually has no idea which technologies and which architectural approaches we have to use to implement it. Just or shell out description or a black box, and please provide me with the system, just answers me the questions. And said, yeah, please let me know which company I should invest in, which company I should avoid, and whatever. And then it's on us to decide, first of all, what kind of services we pick up from the world, from the cloud, and how we process this information. Sure, that big portion of business intelligence that described by the customer who orders the engagement by us because they bring a rule set. How they decide and qualify, identify the companies which are interesting or more interesting, lower of interest, and so on. This business logic, the rule set, is the kind of mill work set, and we have to provide this mill, feed this mill with the grain. And grain, we pick up the information from the public available sources, from the paid sources. Then we have to decide which technologies we use to get a secure way, but also performant way, because you can imagine that the mass data processing, the high performance processing. So we should filter out the sources, filter out the information which we pick up, then pay attention for consistency and definitely for the security, because we handle here with a high sensible set of the data. And that way, the selection of the proper and suitable technology is very important. Anyway, we follow the component and modular concept of architecture design to be able to exchange single component without a redesign of the whole architecture. So we selected the technologies, we made some proof of concept for certain ways, and pipelining of the data into the system. Then we used for mass data processing Databricks, for example, Azure Databricks technology. For ingress for the data, we used Azure Data Factory, one of our major products, major system for transferring of the mass data from external sources into the system. And we used Power BI for presentation of that data. OpenAI used for the sentiment analysis and the processing of verbal and wording feedback of companies and industry sectors.
And you mentioned like the database, like so where is all this data stored? Once you kind of pull all this in, you mentioned Azure database. Is it any specific database, or could be any database? How is it configured?
In fact, you can use any database which suits to your data processing regulations, and additionally some constraints provided by the customer for certain rules and usage constructs of the Azure subscription. We decided to use Databricks, Azure Databricks, with the SQL engine behind.
Okay. And
when
Databricks, go ahead.
go ahead. I was gonna ask something not related to data,
Okay,
so
yeah,
I'll go after you.
Since Mike mentioned Databricks, I am curious. So Databricks, explain to our listeners just so they understand, like, what Databricks would do in a solution like this. How would Databricks fit into the flow of data? You explained how we got Azure Data Factory coming in, the data is then put into a database, and then like where does Databricks fit into this? And then of course we can go into the next level about how Azure AI picks it up. But go ahead and explain to us how Databricks is sort of involved in this flow of data.
Well, Databricks indeed at the heart of the whole system or solution, because it contains not only the number crunching mechanism there, but also equipped with serialized business logic explained and brought by the customer to the system. Setting the ways how the numbers and all other economical data collected from external sources should be done, evaluated, aggregated, and then presented to the customer. So in the Databricks follows, in our engagement, we follow the 3 layers model: the bronze, the silver, and the gold. Cynthia, you have the question?
Oh no, I'm just ready for the next one.
Yeah, the 3 layers. The first, the bronze layer, where we collect the data from different sources. Mostly they have different shape and they have different deepness. But we just collect them to prepare for the cleaning and enrichment to the silver layer, to the second layer, where all the data is consolidated and prepared for the next layer. And the next layer is the gold layer, is a layer to collect and present the data to the end user. The communication or flow of the data between the layers, between bronze to silver, silver to gold, is made using internal pipelines, the workbooks of the Databricks, collecting the IP, the intellectual property, with the rule sets and consideration how the data should be then prepared and how we cook the soup for the golden layer.
And switching gears a little bit, I know you use OpenAI for the sentiment analysis. How, when you start talking to customer about these use cases, how do you kind of project the amount of traffic that will go through your OpenAI endpoints and ensuring that you're throttling it at the right rate and that your cost is somewhat in control, but then all the different users don't get a bad experience like now if you are a free user of some of the generative AI services. It tells you, oh, we're high in demand right now, so you can only use like the older models, for example. How do you account for that?
Well, so the choice of the model as I would say that's a secondary for the system because, as you probably know, actually we are at the level of the development where we can exchange one model for other, and it depends only on some prerequisites or preferences with the evaluation. It was not really deep in the scope to make them contest between the models and behind which model that delivers the better results. That was interesting to connect, to find the proper connection between the quantified and the qualified data and see how the trends collected and calculated on the numbers does match to the trends and sentiments which you can read in mass media or in some industrial reports.
I see. Okay. So OpenAI in that case, the exact model, you're not using like some very sophisticated features of, let's say, that require 4.0, 4.0, right? GPT 4.0 or something like that. You're just basically doing very simple sentiment analysis of text data. You've got a bunch of text messages from different sources, and you're trying to understand what the general sentiment of those text messages are, correct?
Yes, exactly. And we already spoke about the extension possibilities and the next generation of the system having different agents who can then collect this information and build up dedicated rule sets. And by the way, if we put analysis, sentiment analysis for different companies, we should also consider the specific verticals and industries and areas of economy and so on, because the rule set for the toy store is not applicable for the company store, for the furniture store, and so on. So the dedicated rules, and that way we consider that the next step and an extension of the system, we should probably attach different sources of the information and different logic to collect and evaluate the data.
So how is, explain to me then, how does the user, you mentioned they have Power BI as the front end, so to speak, or the UI that's created. And I think it's a good choice to use Power BI because it does all the authentication for you. It's a low code. It kind of produces that information for you. But what does that connect to on the back end? What does that Power BI really, is it connecting straight to the database, or is it connecting to a web service or an API? Like, how does that interface work from Power BI into all of this data estate that you have created?
We connected the Power BI reports. We had the different models, and we evaluated also the different models. And we decided, at least to recommend to the final stage, to connect the Power BI reports to the database using the proxy because of security and networking consideration. Not having that, not to expose the endpoints directly to the internet. But the Power BI reports, me personally, I'm still a fan of the SQL Server reporting services or for all these technologies to present the relational data. But the Power BI as a modern technology provides not only interactive, very important, you have the interactivity and in your reports, and provides you also with built-in capabilities of export of the data in a comfort format like Excel, like PDF, and whatever. And especially for the economical information for the strategic decision makers, It's important feature to export the data and bring that to some conversation, to put it in some additional documentation, maps and whatever. So you have that as a built-in, and you don't need to spend additional effort to generate this hard copy information. Your turn. You are muted.
Thank you. So from what I'm understanding is that this system is constantly running in the background, right? It's constantly evaluating all these things. It's
Yeah.
not a system where the user is going to ask a question and get a response. The user just gets these reports that are constantly being updated as and when new updated information comes in via sentiments, via company updates, information, etc. You're always the Databricks applications are constantly evaluating that, and the output is presented as a report or multiple reports that users can see in Power BI. Is that how it's set up?
Also here we had some investigations and researches, and there are different philosophies in behind. Most of the data we collect on a predictive basis. That means that we collect that at the front, we build up some reports, we build up some information, and the user picks up only already prepared data. But we can start the data collection and data ingress on certain events. And one of this event, the user can put, I would say, something like the order to collect the data for a certain company. The pre-selected companies have a profile of, I don't know, competitors in a certain area, then put an order to collect the retrospective data for last 5 years, look for the trends, compare them. And the comparison of the economical data. We use the calculation capabilities of the Databricks, and additionally OpenAI for retrospective analysis of the sentiments and so on to make us a daily decision. But anyway, the collection of the data and processing of the data is made and using the request from the end user, putting that kind of order on a heap.
I see. And how's that done? Is that done through like a queue or a message? Like I'm just trying to understand like how the flow, how that order works. How does the user get that order into the system?
Yeah, that's just a kind of pipelining with event messages, and the event messages are then processing in ordered way. First, about no priorities. There are no prioritized user who can put the orders quickly than other, faster, but there is a pipeline in behind, yes.
Okay. And Databricks, from what I understand, is that a lot of like code? Is there a lot of Python code that goes into Databricks? Like I'm just trying to understand what the sort of processing pipelines look like, or are these built-in sort of pipelines in Databricks of some sort?
Well, it's not low code and not a no code solution, definitely not. And we tried to use mostly our principal configure before customer, and that way the ingress of the data, we use a configuration capabilities of the data factory pipelines and the pipelining there. But on the Databricks side, the configuration of the business logic, the big portion of Python code in the workbooks, and the workbooks are then organized in a task which are processed in the background, and definitely they encapsulate all the intellectual property of the data processing, the number crunching and evaluation. Yeah.
Got it. I think what would you say was the hardest part of the whole solution? Like, which is the one that would stumped you, or you felt, oh, this was a lot more difficult than we thought it was going to be? Like, I'm sure you must have hit some roadblocks along the way, I should say.
Well, I would say there were 2 points which were most challenging for us. The first one, to serialize and implement the rule set of the customer for data evaluation and making a decision. Because it's very easy to describe it verbally, but try to serialize it in the statements, try to serialize it in a number processing in the statements. So we spent much time to tune the data model, to tune the evaluation processes, to tune the cleanup and consistency check of the data, and so on. The second area with challenges that was implementation environment, developer environment, because it was set by the customer and defined as a constraint. We were not eligible to select our own. So we use some tools and sources predefined by the customer, which are not necessarily the Microsoft tools, as you can imagine. And we had to adapt our approaches and our processes, which we learned from the pure Microsoft environment, and use that with the tools which are not directly our main favorite. But anyway, we were successful in both areas.
And then how do you go about like monitoring or troubleshooting such a complicated system, right? There's all these pieces that are working at different tiers. What's the typical monitoring strategy that you adopt or you adopted for this?
The troubleshooting, we started to identify the challenges and issues early. That means that we already worked in the area of unit testing and early stage of different components, unit tests for data ingress, unit tests for data collection, unit test data consolidation, unit test for data processing. Then also a kind of UI test for UX issues detection. So rather than the identification of issues on the call from the customer, we have something. Definitely, we used also the feedbacks from the end users on the early stage. But again, me personally, I'm the fan of the automatical testing, and that way the unit tests and so, because you better learn about some problems and issues in your software before you get a call from the customer.
And I guess you use something like Azure Monitor to collect all the logs. Like I'm trying to figure out what was your application monitoring strategy there?
That's one of my favorite products on the Azure platform, the Azure Monitor, because you can collect the data, everything, make your software chatty. Make your software chatty and talk with your software. So you can identify and your software can tell you what has happened and where you can drill something to bring that back to run. So we collect the data in the different stages and different steps, and Azure Monitor and log workspaces. We have rich workbooks to visualize the data, and additionally, we use Azure, because my favorite again, the Azure alerting system to get notified. So you don't have to sit in front of the monitor and scroll your table to see where the issue, where the error message. You get just a mail on your smartphone, and you know there's something wrong.
And then what about configuration? Like, how do you configure all of these applications, right? I'm sure there's like 100 configuration items involved here at different tiers. How do you manage? How do you do configuration management in Azure?
The sensitive configuration data, like the secrets and so on, definitely we use a key vault. And the key vault with the possibility to update the sensitive data, not manually. I'm not a friend to update the key vault data manually. We use the pipelines and DevOps to do that centrally and also secure. So this is secure management and a DevOps. Then we use application configuration, assure the service, and application configuration and connection with the key vault to expand the sensitive data which is stored on the key vault side. And as always, some portion of configuration and configuration components, among them also the configuration files, sure.
Wow. So you really touched on many Azure services as part of this configuration. Uh, I mean, I think that's always for me. That's always like the challenge I think that most customers would face is, you've got these big set of services, and I think this is very helpful, right, Mike, that you're giving them an idea. Okay, you've got this data processing system that you're trying to build. It's digital intelligence is what it is in this case. But how do you go about thinking what pieces you should bring into the mix, right? Where you should start looking, because these things you could easily go down the wrong path, right? You could pick the wrong services, and then you kind of regret your choices. And it's nice to hear from someone like you who's done this before, so that they can make better choices when they go about it. Cynthia, any questions from Mike before we kind of wrap up here?
No, that was great. Thank you, Mike.
I thank you. My pleasure.
So yeah, so if we, we'll probably get some, if you have any resources that you feel you can share with our listeners, things that you may have researched or looked into as you were coming up with this solution. I think Cynthia, you talked about like, was it like the architecture, the landing zone or the map? I forget what the some of the content that may be available in Azure that customers can look at. If there's anything like that, please feel send it to me and we'll share it with our listeners.
Okay, I will talk to the project team and clarify with them. But one of my last statements in that way, please use the company Copilot, because many of the questions actually our Copilot is wise, very wise. So many questions can be get answered directly from the Copilot. Among them, also the selection of the proper technology. Just ask your Copilot. I have the challenge way B, C, D, and I need the proper technology for that, and you get an answer. Seriously.
I think I believe you. I think that's definitely the way it's going these days. It just requires somebody to go in and verify that that's the right choice. I mean, I don't want to bet, a multi-million-dollar project on a Copilot output and then go and build it and then find out it's not the right thing.
That is powerful as an advisor, as the desktop advisor is very powerful.
I agree. Yes, both. Mike, thank you so much for your time today. Okay.
Thank you.